Everyone knows that it's imperative that as a responsible firearms owner, you teach any children in your home about firearms safety and that you store your firearms appropriately. But one of the questions I get asked a lot is, when is it appropriate to teach kids about firearms? When is it appropriate to take them shooting? And when is it actually appropriate to talk to them about the defensive nature of the firearms that are in your home? Obviously, these are all important questions to anyone who has firearms staged for personal defense. The reality is, if you only target shoot, if you keep your firearms stored in a large safe, if you keep the ammunition stored, secured in a separate place, and if the firearms are never out and about in the house, if you're never thinking about defensive use of the firearms, and you only take them out maybe for hunting season or for recreational shooting, then these issues aren't as imperative. They aren't as urgent. They aren't a part of your home and family lifestyle. But if you do think about personal defense, if you think about home defense, and if as your kids get older, you start talking to them about things like locking the doors, how to use the alarm codes, not to open the doors for strangers, what to do if the alarm goes off in the middle of the night, what to do if they think there's an intruder, and ultimately how to interact with the defensive firearms in the home as they get old enough and skilled enough to use them, then these marker ages become really important. Well, what I tell people generally as a first fundamental is that you need to balance the child's physical ability to use a gun, not necessarily properly, but their physical ability to literally pull the trigger, or maybe their physical ability to get into the object that contains the gun, whether that's a locked box, a plastic gun case, or a large safe that they now know the combination to, against their maturity and their access. So we've got three things we have to balance. Maturity. Are they ready mentally? Access, could they conceivably have a firearm in their hand? And remember, that includes firearms at friends' houses once they start going out of your immediate control. And do they have the physical ability to use them? Now, if we think about it, we can compare that to when we teach kids about matches or lighters just as easily. You know, if you're a smoker, if you have lighters around the house, if you have matches out around the house, once the child has watched you use the lighter, once they understand how it works, once they get curious about it, and once they're physically able to access it and use it, it's imperative that you teach them about fire safety, or at least set clear boundaries that you believe they will follow about when and how they can access the lighter. If you don't do this, you could very well have a fire in your home, you could get hurt, your child could even be killed by the negligent or malicious use of that lighter because you didn't educate them, you didn't store it properly, you didn't control access, and ultimately you simply didn't make sure that that lighter could exist safely in the home with your child. This is exactly the situation we want to avoid with a firearm. So I tell most families that have defensive firearms that certainly by the age of 5, there should be clear rules about the firearm, and the child should have some concept of gun safety, if that concept is even only that the firearm can be dangerous and they need to stay away from it. If there is a firearm that they can access, they need to not access it and let you, the parent, know immediately. The next step is going to be when you actually decide to teach the child how to use the firearm, how to use it safely, how the firearm operates. Of course, this is going to require a higher level of physical capability and a higher level of mental maturity. Ultimately, after they know how to use the firearm and you trust them around the firearms and you trust them only to access them appropriately, as they get older into their teenage years, they may become part of the home defense plan that that child is going to be involved in. Now, we know there are plenty of examples where children in their teenage years have used firearms appropriately to defend themselves and the rest of their family when there's been an intruder, when there's been a home invader, in situations of extremely violent domestic situations. That is totally possible. So because it's possible, it becomes part of your responsibility. If you realize that firearms are an appropriate tool for defense inside the home and you want to protect your family as best as possible, you have children who are mature enough and physically capable of controlling the firearm, of course at some point it becomes appropriate to teach them about the defensive use of those firearms as well. So at the end of the day, there is no firm age. There's no, you must teach your kids at 3, you can't teach your kids till 6. It's a balance. It's a combination of physical capability, accessibility, and their maturity. All we know is it is absolutely imperative that you teach them about gun safety. Even if you don't have a firearm in your home, remember, they could come into contact with one at someone else's home or even in the public environment. Firearm safety and responsible interaction with firearms needs to be taught to all children.